Hello, true readers. I have decided to make a video today, a interview with a good friend of mine, Renee Lane, who is a dark speculative romance author. And today I figured we would have a little chat about her work and about how her work influences culture. Michelle.
Hey, wow, how my work influences culture.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, you
that's
write
that's
about
big.
sex and love and the
Right,
darkness of life, right? So let's
right.
tell us how your work. Tell us first of all, tell us a little bit about your work, and then maybe you can address how that work influences our culture here in the Pittsburgh area.
Okay. So a few years ago in 2019, I published my first novel, which is it's a horror novel. It was nominated for a Bram Stoker Award that year. And it is a supernatural slave narrative,
What's the
and
title of that book?
it is Invisible Chains.
Yeah.
Um, and that book kind of opened up a lot of doors for me in terms of, well, it helps it was nominated for a Stoker. That's kind of a big deal. Um, and it kind of connected me to a large group of horror writers, internationally, actually, because my novel was translated and published in Spain earlier this year. So I now have international readers beyond English speakers. So that's kind of interesting to me. I never thought that would happen with one of my
Yeah, that's
books.
awesome. Yeah, congratulations.
Thank you. So in terms of how my work influences culture, well, let me talk a little bit about what I write. So I write dark speculative fiction. So it spans a couple of different genres. I'm mostly recognized as a horror writer, but I've written some science fiction. I had a story turned into a podcast last year about a girl who takes LSD that was tampered with by the Nazis and travels through time. I write some dystopian fiction as well. I wrote a story about um, how the government tampered with DNA samples and created boutique drugs that were used to later enslave people and uphold the prison system. So I guess in some ways you could say that my stuff has a political tilt to it. I write about intersectionality, um, specifically about women of color, and how to navigate this world while discovering their own identity, their place in the world, and dealing with all the terrifying things that are happening around them. So that's kind of what I write about.
Okay. So so let's break this down a little bit. So you write with a little bit of a social justice narrative in all of your work.
Mhm.
Um and but it just made me laugh, like the idea of LSD and time travel and Nazis. Great. Okay.
Yeah,
So
based on a true story.
suffice to say, fiction takes us out of our world. It's an escape, right? Um,
Mhm.
and that's generally true, unless we're talking about literary fiction that's commenting on life. Um, However, even in the genres, there is a commentary going on, which you do, right? And you do it well. What in your new book, which is titled, tell me again what it is, The
Mhm.
Covenant?
It's the courtship of Nora Fagan, and it is the first book in a 5 book series, which is the A Marriage Made in Hell series.
Okay. Now this one is more of a like dark fantasy because it deals with like fallen angels and things like that, right? So,
Right.
however, even in that dark fantasy romantic landscape, okay, you have a commentary, yes.
Oh
That
yeah. Hmm.
what would that commentary be for our culture and life right now?
So, okay. Um, so a fair number of my stories are set in the past, some recent past. I don't write a lot about the future. Um, but like I wrote a slave narrative, so that was set in antebellum Louisiana. This one is also set in New Orleans. At least that's where the story begins. And it's the mid 1940s. Um, the two main characters are this young woman who is about to become a succubus, and her she's the daughter of a mambo and a an archangel. So um, she's ethnically mixed, but also um, magically mixed. She has different, because of her parentage.
Mhm.
Um, and she's promised in a arranged marriage to this fallen angel who presents as a redheaded Irishman. So it's an interracial romance. And it's very sex positive because she's a succubus and she's trying to figure out her identity in terms of her sexuality, the fact that she has to most likely have many partners because that's how succubi survive. They feed on sexual energy. But rather than it being destructive, she turns out to be a healer because sexual energy is actually very positive and has been found to heal people, weirdly enough. Um, so some of the things that I'm talking about, I believe, are relationships that are not necessarily traditional relationships. Um, she's promised to this fallen angel in an arranged marriage, but there's a clause in that contract that says that they can't have sex until they're wed. So it's this weird, antiquated setup where she's obviously not going to be a virgin when they get married because she's a succubus. But so she's going to have a relationship with a different supernatural character in each book until they are able to get married, which will happen on her 100th birthday. So it spans a long period of time. Basically, they're in a polyamorous relationship because they're joined. They're in a committed relationship with each other. They just have to have sexual relationships with other people. So I feel like in some ways I'm talking about how women have choices, how they have autonomy over their bodies, who they decide to be with or not be with. It's I'm talking really mostly about this young woman's journey to identifying herself sexually and independently from her family, from the expectations of being a succubus. There's a lot happening in the book. Yeah.
Okay. Now, I'm curious about why you chose Samuel as your archangel because he's not really a Christian angel. It's a he's an angel of lore, right? I'm trying
Mm-hmm.
to remember who or what like religion actually. I don't know the history of that we'll call him a character, right? That archetype.
Right.
But he's not really a bad one. He's not really a good one. He's kind of like a Quentin Tarantino character, right? He's interested
Yeah.
in revenge. He's interested in like putting down evildoers, you know.
Right. Right. Well,
Why'd you
he's
choose him? Like what made you go after that kind of an angel?
so because basically this arranged marriage is set into motion as a way to maintain the balance between good and evil because um, a group of archangels and the fallen meet in secret in hell the day after Lucifer falls. And they are all excited because they think something really amazing is about to happen because, you know, Lucifer has challenged this idea of free will. And so everyone's excited. They're really angry about it happening. So there's like everyone in heaven is like running around freaking out, not sure what's going on. And those who've fallen, followed him into the pit are like, okay, great. What happens next? And he's like, what do you mean? I don't understand. I don't understand. They're like, well, we have this opportunity to make great things happen. You know, you did this to help humanity, right? And he's like, uh, I guess. And so they come up with this plan because they realize that if there isn't a balance, all bad all the time is terrible, but so is all good all the time. And so this idea that these archangels are sort of in this gray area, along with the fallen, they also enlist some demons. They enlist some other deities because they realize that if they can't maintain the balance, they're going to kick off the apocalypse. And that's really not good for anyone.
Okay. So the message of this current work that you just put out, this is really about sexual freedom and like a feminist choice kind of narrative. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
good. Now, throughout your writing career, you have a slew of work that I noticed on your Amazon page, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is your second novel, though, right?
Yeah, this is my second novel. Most of my stuff is short fiction.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
If we had to characterize your work as now, if we had to characterize your work in a pop culture current events kind of feel, would you just say it was feminist work?
No,
Okay. Tell me.
I would say, oh my, that's weird. It's so weird to talk about my own work that way. I think it goes beyond that because while I feel in many ways the things that I believe in kind of put me in the feminist camp. I have a lot of issues with traditional feminism because traditional feminism isn't always inclusive of Black and brown women. And so I have a hard time accepting all of what comes along with it because it doesn't always include me. And so I would say that what I'm really writing about is identity politics and the intersectionality that people experience because of all of the different parts that make them whole. And I don't know. I guess in some ways I have an anti-racist message. I have a message of love. I believe that people should be able to govern themselves. Not necessarily, I'm not anti-government, but I'm also not about having people take away my freedom based on what I look like or what my plumbing is made up of. Yeah.
As far as, I mean, I don't want to make this into a political conversation, but I understand what you mean by the traditional. I mean, we're talking about like Sojourner Truth telling Betsy Ross, "Ain't I a woman?"
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So like the first wave and I would say even second wave are questionable. When you start looking at when you start looking at writers like Bell Hooks or Audre Lorde, I mean that's more on board with where I'm at in terms of including not only Black and brown women, but poor women as well, people who are not part of the middle class, working class women. And first and second wave feminism, I would say, even to a certain degree, current versions of feminism do not include those narratives.
Now, you were not born and raised in Pittsburgh, right? You were born and raised out near Harrisburg. Is that correct?
Yeah, I grew up in South Central Pennsylvania in Carlisle.
How would you say that your young life, your formative years has influenced your work?
So I just turned 50 in February. So I grew up
So
in the
old.
70s.
You're so old.
I know I'm
I
ancient.
won't be 50 until April. So you're very old.
Yeah.
I'm very
Yeah,
young.
I'm an old lady. Um, so I grew up in the 70s and 80s in the middle of nowhere, Pennsylvania, in a very homogeneously white, rural, working class setting. And for a very long time, I was the only person who looked like me in the neighborhood. And it wasn't really a neighborhood. It was like a road and a bunch of like houses like planted on that road. Um, so until I went to school, there weren't a lot of other people of color that I was around growing up. And so how that influenced my work, when your formative years, lots of things can influence you or impact your psychology. And I think one of the things that I dealt with a lot was racism, either the way the racism I witnessed, like, every day, 1970s, 1980s, you can say whatever you want to people, racism, from watching television, watching old movies. But like the people who raised me were racist also. And so um
The
I
people who raised you were racist.
oh yeah, 100%.
How so? Who raised you then? That
My mother's family.
I see.
Yeah, my
Your
mother's
mother's white,
family.
your
Yeah, my
father.
mom's white. And that was my family. I didn't have access to my father's family because my mom and dad divorced before I was born, and I never met him. Um, I had a stepfather who was black, and I think honestly, if he would not have been in my life, I don't think I would I don't think I would have had as many opportunities to be successful
Hmm.
without his support and encouragement.
Oh, really?
Um, yeah, yeah.
You know, I know this might sound like a gender stereotype, right? But most women writers I talk to, their mothers are their biggest inspiration, not their fathers. So I'm surprised to hear you say that actually.
Yeah, well, that's something I'm working on in therapy because um I
Now, why
love
is that? Why? Because
well,
mom was like,
I
"Hey,
love
shut up, get
her.
a
Right,
job, get married, have babies."
right. Yeah, no, no, no. I love my mother, but I grew up very fast because I feel like I spent more time, our roles were reversed. So I spent more time raising her. And so um
Really?
my connection
No,
to
this
my
is being recorded, right?
uh-huh.
Okay.
Oh, I speak my truth now. I don't care who hears it.
Well, that
Yeah,
is the theme. That is entire body of my work is to live our truth, right?
that's right. And here's the thing. What's that saying about if people wanted you to write nicer things about them, they should have treated you better to begin with, right? So, um, I just I'm not going to pull any punches anymore. I'm telling the truth about things, how people make me feel, how they made me feel in the past. I might change the names, but people will recognize themselves on the page.
Right. Right.
Yeah,
No, believe me, I understand. I have
yeah,
a rather regressive family as well.
yeah.
Of course, that regressive family has completely fueled the body of my work, as well as my experiences in this very Rust Belty kind of region.
Right, right.
Um, okay. So when did you move to Pittsburgh originally?
So I
How
originally
old were
moved
you?
out here in 97.
How old were you? Like the year doesn't matter, right? Like 90s
I was in my
post internet.
mid 20s. Yeah, mid 20s.
What brought you here? Like why?
I was I was working on my first master's degree,
Hmm.
and I had done all the coursework and was trying to work on the thesis, and no one understood what I was doing. And the small town where I went to school, I went to school at Shippensburg University, and it just kept getting smaller and smaller. And I had a weird situation where I was walking across campus behind a student, just, typical Shippensburg University student, 20 something white guy with a backwards baseball hat. And I had this weird fantasy situation where I imagined myself jumping on his back and tearing out his throat.
Gentlemen, anyone watching this who's a man, like make sure you put the baseball cap on backwards. That's
Right.
clearly the signal we're getting here. Okay.
That's right. And so, and it like freaked me out because I was like, okay, I'm not really a violent person. I will defend myself and defend others, but I don't seek out violence. I do not. And so I had to take a beat, and I went and talked to one of my professors who I trusted, and she was like, maybe you need to take a break. Take a
Wait a minute,
break.
hold on. Let's back this up a second. You saw a guy walking with a baseball cap on backwards.
Mhm.
That somehow brought you to a point of fury and emotional rage that you had to take a break from school.
Yeah, because it was just a triggering thing. So okay, so Shippensburg University is very small. It's small. I mean, it's a state school, but the town itself is just, it's tiny. It's so tiny. And it's so close to where I grew up that all of the things that had been aggravating me, the things that made me angry as a teenager into adulthood, it was just like a constant reminder over and over. Racism, sexism, microaggressions all over the place, people just walking up to you and saying the most insensitive things that you can imagine, and then expecting you to be happy all the time and be happy to be there and just so thankful and whatever. And so I had the shits of it, and I was like, I can't. And this student was a physical representation to me of all of that. And it just happened like out of nowhere. I didn't expect it. I didn't know it was going to happen. So I took a break and I moved out to Pittsburgh, and I got some temp jobs, and I partied, and then I got a real job. And then I had that real job for about 2 or 3 years, and I was like, oh my God, I need to finish my college degree. And so I did that, and I stuck around for like, I don't know, 16 years. My son was born here. I was married. I worked at Pitt. I worked at CMU. I'm working at CMU again. Um, but I have, like, in all that time, I have all these connections that I've been making over that time, people that I'm still connected with. Like, I still talk to people who I worked with at Pitt for my first job, like in the early 2000s.
And I
Um,
understand, but are you saying that these people are somehow influencing your work?
I don't know that they're influencing my work. They're very supportive of me as a writer, as a person, and they are encouraging me to continue my work, I guess. Um, Pittsburgh is a
So the
very,
root of your work, though, is kind of is. I'm sorry, I want to dial this
that's
back.
okay.
So the root of your work is pretty much grounded, though, in those younger years when you were dealing with insensitivity, dealing with a lot of garbage in your family,
Hmm.
with a lot of bigotry and hate, and for the lack of a better term, uncomfortable feelings throughout your days and nights.
Right.
And that has kind of, and that with a historical understanding, right? I mean,
Hmm.
I went to university a few
Hmm.
times.
Hmm.
So with your historical understanding, that all those things kind of culminate into your fiction. Is that an accurate depiction I'm painting?
Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah,
Okay.
definitely. Yeah. I would agree that I would say that my formative years have informed the larger body of my work, and my experiences and research based on those things, trying to gain a better understanding of myself, is what I'm writing about.
Also, for anyone watching this, Michelle, before we start recording, told me she wanted to go make a drink for herself, and she left to go make a drink, and she has not had any sips of that drink yet. Oh, now she's going to do it. Okay. Anyway, um, so anybody who's also viewing, just so you know, we're on a free version of Zoom, and the software just informed me that's kicking us off in a couple of minutes. So I want to give you a chance to kind of wrap up and kind of plug your work. Tell people the works that you'd like people to read and where they can find them.
Okay. I would suggest starting with Invisible Chains because it's the work that I'm most proud of. And it's available on Amazon. In fact, you can find all of my work on Amazon under Michelle Renee Lane. Um, I don't know. I have a piece of nonfiction in Writer's Workshop of Horror 2 that that was also nominated for a Stoker this past year. And the editor of that, Michael Nost, handed me an award earlier this year for um, my work in fiction, and that was something else because Michael Nost is a pretty amazing dude, and he's a very, very kind person who supports the work of all writers. So, yeah, I don't know. I guess I still have a blog that I write. Girl Meets Monster. It's a little dusty. I need to start working on that again. But Girl Meets Monster is michellerlane.com. And I have a backlog of articles about other writers, different media that I read or watch and review. Um, and sometimes it's just really reflections on the day-to-day stuff, the stuff about identity politics that I write about in my fiction as well. Um, but yeah, I would start with Invisible Chains because it's what I'm most proud of. But the Courtship of Nora Fagan is currently available for pre-sale for Kindle on Amazon, and it's going to be released on November 19th.
Will it become a paperback or hardback or just
It'll be a paperback.
okay?
Mhm.
Okay. All right, great. Thanks, Michelle.
Yeah.
Um, Again, this is the first of what I'm hoping to do more interviews for my readers as time goes on. I want to restrict this to Pittsburgh folk. Um, and Michelle is someone I went to school with at Seton Hill University, and we became friends there. Um, Actually, we became friends after there because we didn't go to that school at the same time. We became friends for a community,
Mhm.
and just because we're both local to the area. So I'm hoping to kind of lasso in more local creative talent, music, poetry, fiction, nonfiction. So I will let you guys know when I have more interviewees to come. And I'd like to thank Michelle for joining me tonight. Thank you, Michelle. And we will talk to you soon. Take care.
Sounds great.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.